Hey, everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock with you. We're continuing our series today where we're looking at the four quarterbacks in this four quarterback competition. And we're kind of going through the idea of what each quarterback needs to do to win the job and what it would look like if they did actually win the job. And we're talking win the job week one out of training camp here. So today's the day, the one everybody's been thinking about, and people are going to be excited about this one. Shedeur Sanders, obviously fifth round pick, number 144 overall. And of the four quarterbacks we talked about, probably the least likely, if there were betting odds on this, he would probably be at the bottom of the betting odds to win this job. But let's just start here. Mary Kay, what does Shedeur need to accomplish? What would need to happen from what we saw in the offseason program into training camp for him to actually have a chance, for him to actually not even have a chance, for him to just outright win the job?
Well, there's something very, very specific that Shedeur Sanders has to do. And that is he's got to just go skyrocketing up the learning curve in terms of the pre-snap protocol and the pre-snap operations. That means completely understanding the terminology, being able to get that call, being able to relay that call and call it out and make sure that everybody knows what it is in the huddle and where they're going with this, but also then sliding offensive line protections and signaling motions and all of the things that have to happen before that ball is snapped. That's where he needs to narrow that gap on Dillon Gabriel, who has a more computer-like processing speed and brain. And this is not to say that Shedeur can't do it, because he also has a very high football acumen. So let's not misinterpret what I'm saying here whatsoever. He's got a very high football acumen, and he's got a very strong work ethic that was instilled in him from the time he was a very young boy. It's just that he hasn't had to do some of these things yet. But the way that he came on strong in the final 2 weeks, meaning the final week of organized team activities and the mini camp week, I think the Browns are very, very encouraged about his ability to pick this stuff up and pick it up fast. And if he can do that and couple all of that pre-snap stuff with his post-snap prowess, which has been very good to this point, and if he can marry those things, then he's got a chance. Again, I'm going to qualify it. I think it's a long shot. I think it is a long shot right now for Shedeur to go from number 4 to number 1 on opening day because of all the things that a rookie quarterback has to figure out and learn. But he kept himself in the hunt and in the thick of it with a really, really good performance in his last couple of weeks. He really opened some eyes. He looked good to all of us. We saw it. I mean, it certainly passed the eyeball test. And the Browns are really excited about what they saw. So if he can put all of that together, and it's going to take a lot of film study. It's going to take, we have heard quarterbacks before talk about their wives would, they'd be barking out terminology to their wives, right? I mean, so he just needs to be barking out Browns terminology to his brothers or his dad or whoever he's with in this 4 or 5 weeks that he has off. So if he can do all of that and still look really good in terms of his accuracy, ball placement, ball speed, decision making, that continues to give him a shot.
I happened to see a clip recently. It was Matthew Stafford in a huddle, and it must have been during a timeout because the coach to quarterback communication was on, and Stafford's in the huddle, and he starts to read out the play, and he stops like midway through, and he's like, wait, he's still going, talking about Sean McVay. And the whole time he's just sitting there, he's still going. Like it was taking forever for Sean McVay to relay this play call to Matthew Stafford. And I think people need to understand that these NFL play calls for a lot of these guys are so long. And Kevin Stefanski is in that group of guys whose play calls are just insanely long. And these guys, a lot of these guys just don't have to deal with that in college. It's kept really simple. I mean, I referenced on another pod at one point, like Jackson Dart was showing John Gruden his snap count, and it was just a clap, and we see that a lot, right? We see the clapping, and it is a leap to the NFL, and if you haven't done it to that degree, it can take some time to catch up. And I guess what I keep coming back to, Ashley, is when we were watching the throws we were seeing, like the actual football, this is the Shedeur Sanders that had people really excited, and like the ball placement, the timing, all of that stuff. But there was obviously something that was just making the Browns want to slow play this and not throw him out there to the level that they did Dylan Gabriel. And it feels like that's probably it. Like, we just want to make sure that you are completely up to speed before you get in the huddle with Joel Bitonio and Ethan Posick and Jerry Jeudy and all these guys and have to call these long plays and get this team lined up. We're just not in a rush to get you there. And it's just one of those things that takes time.
Yeah, and I think it's okay that it takes time, and a lot of people are in the same boat because of the simplification of it at the college level. Like, that's just the reality, and I think it's okay to want to make sure that he can handle that part of the job and take a little bit more time and have some patience there. And I mean, Shador's talked about being okay with the pace everything is going at right now, and I think we've talked about it before, but if you throw too much at a guy too soon and inhibit his confidence in any way, then that's not going to be good either. So, yeah, I think that part for me is like sort of the unknowable with him. And obviously, the Browns, I don't think, would come out and say that. But it is something to keep in mind that for a rookie, especially, it's a lot to digest even without that element of it. But when you add in the more complicated play calls and everything you're even responsible for, I think a lot of times even that number one backup job for a rookie is a lot, right? Like Dorian Thompson Robinson talked about that in 2023, that he didn't even know what he didn't know until, suddenly he's thrown in there for that Ravens game, right? And he wasn't 100% ready for everything they needed him to do. And for everything you need to do as a backup to help get the quarterback QB1 ready to start that week. I mean, that's a big job either way. So I think it's okay to slow play it if you have that luxury, which these guys kind of do right now.
So let's fast forward to training camp. And we discussed this a little bit about OTAs and minicamp. All sorts of people just talking about, well, hey, Shedeur should be quarterback one. The Browns need to start Shedeur Sanders. And while this is being said, we're standing at practice watching him take third and fourth team reps and not get any first team reps. So, Mary Kay, is there like a drop dead point here in training camp where it's like, okay, if we haven't seen Shedeur Sanders take any first team reps at all, like, it's just not going to happen by week one? He is definitively not going to win this job. Is it like 2 weeks? Can it go longer than that? When do you need to see him actually get some first team reps?
I actually think that he will get some first team reps in those first very crucial weeks of training camp before they head into the first preseason game in Carolina, where they will have a joint practice in Carolina. I think you're going to see him get some of those first team reps because it is not a competition and it's not a level playing field if he's not going to get any of those. He's got to be throwing to Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku. He's got to be trying to get the ball out when Myles Garrett is bearing down on him, or Mason Graham has his hands stuck up in the air, or Alex Wright is bearing down on him, or Denzel Ward is blanketing his target. He's got to experience that in the early going of training camp if he is actually going to stay in this competition and make it a game. So if he's not doing that, and I think he will, I absolutely think he will, and I think we'll see it in the first week, because I think he earned that by what the Browns saw in minicamp and that last week of OTAs. I think they're like, all right, now let's throw some more on his plate and see what he can do with it. So once he does that, and if he passed that test, then he'll keep going. And as I've mentioned before, I really do think the flashpoint are the two joint practices against the Philadelphia Eagles. By that time, I really do believe that the Browns are going to have to be narrowing it down, or have it narrowed down to their top two guys. And I just think by nature of those practices that Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett are probably going to get those first team reps in those practices because they're not going to be playing in the game. And Shedeur and Dylan are going to be playing in the game. But I just think that we will have a pretty good idea then what's going on with their first team thoughts and their QB1 thoughts. And if Shedeur isn't getting any first team reps against that really, really good Philadelphia defense, then I think you can surmise that maybe he's not in the cards anymore for week 1.
Yeah, and I think there's a scenario where he could look really good in like the second half of that game, and people could be like, "Look at this, Shadeur's awesome in this game," but it might already be over by then, because like you said, those Philly practices are going to be so important, and you can't throw a guy out there who's not ready. I mean, you're doing those practices to get your team ready to play football. Kevin Stefanski loves joint practices. He thinks those are like the most important things in the world. He takes them very seriously. So to me, Ashley, like Shore might get some first team reps at the end of July or even early August. Maybe he gets them against Carolina. I don't know. But if he's not getting them against Philly, and I would say the same about Dylan Gabriel too, but if he's not getting them against Philly, if he's not in the running to win that job, I don't think you're throwing him out there against Philadelphia's first team defense just to see what he can do. I think you would only do that if you really believed he had a chance to win that job.
No, and I mean, we talked about this after or during mini camp, like this idea of having those joint practices with the Eagles circled. And I do think that's right. I think with the timing of training camp, by then, for their sake, knowing how Kevin Stefanski likes to handle reps, I think it's going to almost have to be wrapped up. Like they're going to have an idea by that point about like 2.5, 2 weeks into training camp. You're just going to have to know because you're going to have to know how you're dividing reps up going into week 1 because you're going to want your starter to get most of those first team snaps. And those 2 days of practice are more important than any preseason game they're going to play, too. We know they value them more because obviously it's good competition, but you're able to control the environment a little bit more. So I do think it's going to be really telling by that point, and it not just for Shedeur, but in general how the QB battle is going. I think by necessity you're going to get a better picture of where things stand.
Okay, so we'll kind of get to what it might look like if he wins that job. But Mary Kay, you said it. It feels like a long shot. But I mean, it is safe to say Shedeur is like 4th right now, and we're again, training camp hasn't even started. Shedeur is 4th, very much 4th right now, and very much behind all the other guys when it comes to the possibility of starting week 1.
Yes, that is absolutely how I see it at this point. And he would have to climb up over the other 4. The other 3, if he is going to end up starting week 1. But in the event that they just look at it and they say, he's too exciting, he's got too much momentum, he's making too many plays, he's throwing too many touchdown passes, we got to see what this is all about. We've got to throw him into a live setting and see how he handles it. In the event that that happens, then you have to pare back your offense and you have to give him things to do that he feels really super comfortable with. And you have to put your head together with him and you have to make sure that he's telling you exactly how he feels about certain plays. And you throw a bunch of stuff out and you add some things in and you hone some things and you identify his strengths and how he's really been connecting with certain players and you make it as simple as possible. And that's the only way that you would do it. And I don't know if you want to play football that way in the beginning part of the season because you're going to be playing against 2 division rivals to start out with. And then you're going to head right into 3 NFC North playoff teams. And then you're going to be going into 5 out of 6 on the road. You're going to be going to London. I don't know if you really want to be playing a super simple offense, but I think that's what it would take.
Yeah, and so he's the most intriguing of the 4 to me, but I think because of this idea of what you might need to do and because of how hard that schedule is, like it might be really exciting if Kevin Stefanski stands in front of us and says, "Hey, Shedeur Sanders is going to be our starting quarterback week 1." It's not nearly as exciting if you're 1-5 and Shedeur is struggling, or if you go out in week 1 and it looks like what it looked like. I mean, remember how excited everybody was going into that Dallas game last year, and then you go out there and it looks like that in week 1. That excitement over Shedeur fades really quickly, and these guys in that locker room, they want to have a chance to win these football games. And if their belief in Shedeur wavers, it's tough to put that toothpaste back in the tube. And so that's the other part of this, Ashley, is like there, like you were saying, there's just no rush. There, if he starts week 1, if he starts week 8, if he starts week 12, there's no rush. You're gonna have a chance to find out what he can do. And if for some reason you're really good with Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett or Dylan Gabriel, and you don't get to see it, that's kind of a win-win anyway, because at least you're really good. So I don't know. There's just no rush here at all.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think I said this around when the schedule came out. I don't think it's that novel of an idea either, but the first 6 games in that schedule are so difficult because you have all 3 division opponents, and then you have the 3 best NFC North opponents. Like that's your first 6 games, and one of those games is obviously the Vikings in London. So it just is not, I don't think, set up for a rookie to come in and excel. Like it would be really, really surprising, I think, to see that. So like for that reason, I'm still of the mind as we're like in this break and dead period that everyone is going to be better off to have a veteran come in and deal with that. And whichever veteran it is, great. And I do still think both rookies are going to need to get a chance here because you need to know what you're going to have before 2026. But to start off, to give yourself a chance to keep everyone bought in, I think it needs to be a veteran just with how this schedule is.
And that'll be interesting because, like, there is a chance Shador just looks really good in training camp when we're sitting there watching, and he makes a bunch of really good throws, and and it just looks awesome. There's always that possibility that could happen, but that's Kevin Stefanski's job is to kind of fight back against that. So, like, what could it look like? We sort of talked about how it could go poorly, but Mary Kay, I come back to a name. Everybody likes to make the Tom Brady comparison, right? Because he's wearing number 12 and he was a 5th-round pick. Obviously, Brady was a 6th, but a day 3 pick. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. So I don't know. I don't love making that comparison, but the name that I keep coming back to is Brock Purdy. What if Shedeur can convince these guys that he can beat Brock Purdy, who for some reason is still divisive, I think, among some football people on social media. But like, he's a really good quarterback. He just got paid a bunch of money. He's been to a Super Bowl. Probably should have won that Super Bowl. Like if Shedeur Sanders convinces me he's Brock Purdy, who by the way wasn't a week 1 starter, I think that would be that's about as good an outcome as you could get from this.
That would be an amazing outcome if they felt like they were getting their version of a Brock Purdy. And of course, if that were the case, that would mean that Shedeur has picked everything up really, really well in terms of the scheme, the nuances of the game, what he's seeing, what he's reading, everything, the terminology, all of that, the whole cerebral side of the game. It would mean that he has just knocked it right out of the park, because that's what it's going to take. That's what it would take, unless of course they bring it down to a manageable level that a rookie who has not done these kinds of things before would be able to do. And I'm not just talking about him, but really any rookie. Even Tommy Reese, when we asked him, how hard is it to learn to call those plays and do all of those things that you need to do pre-snap? And he said it's a lot harder than you think. So if he's doing that, then he is operating at somewhat of a Brock Purdy-like clip. And that would be the best case scenario that you could possibly have. So right now, I think they're willing to give him that chance to say, all right, let's see what you got. I mean, Shedeur calls himself legendary and all those kinds of things. So let him show them if he can be that guy. He certainly is fun to watch and exciting, and we do see that. And I am anxious to see how does it continue to look against and with a higher level of competition. So we got to cross that hurdle. But if he can do all of those things, then and he can establish that he has some of those late round pick Brock Purdy like tendencies, then they're going to be really, really onto something here.
Yeah, and it's sort of similar. Like obviously, to run Kyle Shanahan's offense, you've got to have a certain level of competence when it comes to getting those plays in and all of that stuff. You've got to see. But that is also an offense, much like Kevin Stefanski's, that can help a quarterback be his absolute best. The other thing too, just to keep this comparison going, like Brock Purdy was never supposed to be Brock Purdy. Like he was never supposed to be this guy. They gave up a bunch of picks to go get Trey Lance, and then they take Brock Purdy with the very last pick in the draft. Like he was never supposed to be this guy, and then all of a sudden, like I said, he just signed this huge extension, and he's the guy for certain in San Francisco now long term. So Ashley, like that's I know some people might hear Shedeur Sanders could be Brock Purdy and hear that as an insult, which again I don't get. I don't get the dislike for Brock Purdy, but again, if that's who he is, I'll sign up for that every day. And then you use those first round picks next year on a receiver and I don't know, 2 receivers. I don't care, whatever you want to do. You just start building this thing around him. That would be a great outcome for this.
Yeah, I think when like that distinction is so important to make, like when we say this, that would absolutely be a win for the Browns and everyone involved if that's how it plays out. And yeah, it is striking like how similar it would be. Obviously the Trey Lance thing very different than Deshaun Watson, but still it's essentially what the Browns are trying to do by doing this and seeing if they have a guy somewhere else because Deshaun Watson has just not worked out here. So it would be, I think it's a comparison I haven't thought of yet, but I do like it. I think it would be very appropriate if that's how it worked out. To say that, and yeah, no, I don't understand the negativity towards Brock because look at everything that has happened in San Francisco that he's been able to do, and you get him where you got him. It was taking a stab at a guy, and it ended up working out in your favor. And I think it would be really, really huge if they do manage to hit on one of these rookies, and it is going to help them in the future. And yeah, you can do a lot then. You have a lot of leeway next year knowing, okay, we have these 2 first round picks. How exactly do we want to use them?
Okay, our series on quarterbacks, the 4 Browns quarterbacks, how they can win the job, what it would look like if they won the job, all of that. We're doing all 4 quarterbacks. So Flacco, Pickett, Gabriel, and of course, Shedeur Sanders. We'll be back with our daily pods here once training camp starts. It's coming up. It's getting close. So make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Find our YouTube channel, Cleveland Browns, on cleveland.com. Of course, find us on our socials. Our Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk, and our Twitter is Orange Brown Talk. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.